There's been quite a bit of discussion and focus in education circles about the merits of lecture capture. And a lot of focus has been placed on this concept of lecture capture. I'd like to take us down a slightly different track today and discuss lecture capture in a broad sense, but with more specific a purpose about the purpose of what it is we're trying to achieve in terms of capturing any kind of elements, streams, video, audio, text, and our plan to share it. My name is Mike Hamilton. I'm from Digital Inclusion, and I focus specifically on educational services and solutions. So let's talk about fit for purpose, rich media production, as opposed to lecture capture. Rich media is a collection of streams, perhaps audio, perhaps video, perhaps screen capture, a variety of things, which you assemble. You need to have an intent. What is the reason to capture this? What is it I need to capture? How is it going to be used? By whom? From where? At what time? Using what tools? This isn't a simple discussion about, yes, I can record myself talking and record a video. So let's break the market up into two particular areas. One of the areas, if we look to the right of the screen here, is essentially e-learning or effectively computer-based training development. The other area is that of what's more commonly known today as blended learning. Now, blended learning means I'm combining the use of technology with face-to-face interactions. And let's focus on that for a second. So we can do this in three scenarios. We can start by saying, what if I share rich media material before we have a face-to-face interaction? What would the purpose of that be? Perhaps to tease, perhaps to focus attention, perhaps to contextualize, so that all parties in the interaction are geared up, ready, focused, and attentive at the start of the interaction. Today, education needs to shift from an expert sharing information and students passively writing it down or listening, to challenge, debate, interaction, questioning, reflecting. We need to use tools to help make our interactions more meaningful and more effective. A key idea here, though, is that these interactions need to be kept short. As a teaser, as a context establishment type tool, keep them down to typically less than 5 minutes. Let's look at capturing the actual interaction itself, and this is the traditional view of lecture capture. This is where a lecturer does his presentation for 40 minutes, the bell rings, he starts, the bell rings, he finishes, and that entire proceeding has been captured with all its interruptions, with all the distractions that might take place in a class, and there's a long stream of 30 to 40 minutes of material which is presented then in the form of a video recording. Now, very few students will sit and watch an entire recording. In order to hold their attention, in order to make it of value to students, you need to enable them to selectively review parts of, not necessarily all, that video. If a student's been absent, he might, the first time round, watch the entire video. But after having watched the entire video or attended the full video, the student has contextual problems and needs to review that material and focus on the specific elements that relate to that problem. So while it might be as long as the lecture, introduce searchability. Help the student to go to the particular parts that he needs to be able to go to, without wasting his time downloading an entire video or scanning forward, backwards until he finds the particular area of interest. I myself know that if I'm looking at videos passively, after a couple of minutes I'm zoning into television mode. So these videos should be as interactive as possible. They should enable feedback. There should be some form of comments. Students should be able to take notes that are time synchronized on the video, which they can use later when they search not only what was put there by the lecturer, but their own notes on the video itself. So there's a great opportunity here to capture lectures, but not to serve them as complete lectures. Allow flexibility for the student. So that's capturing during an interaction. The third area is that of capturing post-implementation. And this is where we complement the interaction. I might have delivered a lecture and realized that there was one point in the lecture where students didn't seem to quite grasp the concept. Or there were some ideas raised for which I didn't have material in the lecture, which really added value to the class. Let's now consider the capture post interaction. So the lecture's been completed, and what I realized is that during the lecture students struggled with some particular concept. Or alternatively, some ideas might have been raised for which I did not have material in the lecture, but really added value to the discussion. So why not after the lecture spend a couple of minutes putting something together that you can share with the students after the lecture, which complements what you discussed in the lecture. So now we have three scenarios: before, gearing them up; during, and after, where you complement what you did during the primary interaction. So three scenarios for capturing and adding value to the student experience. The bottom of the slide shows essentially an area I'm not going to be discussing today, and this is the professional authoring of courses. And there are super tools available for producing e-learning materials. Now, e-learning is more than capturing a video. These are really interactive, engaging, animated, audio-visual course materials that are professionally designed, scripted, and structured. What I'm focusing on here is lecturers. Lecturers who are able to very rapidly add value to students without needing to be professional authors of materials. I said it's not just about capture. Capture is only the first phase. When we talk about rich media production, sharing, usage, and feedback, the capture part is where you start. Once you've captured, you then go on and produce and prepare for use. And the production might mean that I'm taking audio and video and I'm combining it with a presentation, or I need to bring in some documents, or whatever it might be. I need to then package that so that it can be used by students. Now, we know that students use a variety of different technologies, and there are a variety of different standards in the industry. Moving on from that, we have to find some way of sharing this. Do we simply put it on a server? Do we simply say, come along with your USB sticks, or we'll distribute it on CDs? Or do we put it on a website? Or do we put it on a learning management platform? So we need to share and set up the access so that only those who should access should be able to share. Once it's shared and ready for use, the students can then interact with it, and there's a variety of considerations there. And finally, what's the point of doing this if you don't get feedback? What's the point of doing this if you can't see whether what you're doing is adding value, is assisting, and you get feedback from the students, and you can also monitor student activity? So when I talk about lecture capture, I'm talking about all of these scenarios. Anybody can record a video. That is not the challenge. The challenge is, once I've recorded this video, how do I really make it useful to anyone on any system from anywhere, and understand how it's used and how effective it's been. If we look at the capture part, start by planning for purpose. Have some sort of a script that you're going to work through. Test it. Make sure that everything's working. Record your necessary streams and the supporting elements. From a production point of view, you edit and combine these streams and elements. You then package it and prepare it for multi-platform access. You share it by uploading it to some store that you've chosen, a file store or a cloud-based service which is accessible to multiple parties, and you can control and manage the rights of access. Viewers will connect to it, hopefully authenticate, be able to search the contents of your video libraries and search the videos, be able to view it, interact with it, comment on it, make notes on it, etc. And you as a lecturer then should be able to see who has been accessing this, who has been viewing it, which parts have been viewed more often than others, where are their problem areas, looking at the stats, get some feedback. Review this, reflect on it, and learn from it going forward. Let's look at this another way now. And the first thing I'll say here is, what are the typical things you would record? So the streams that you record and you capture are effectively audio from your microphone, video from your webcam, which is built into the system that you're using, no specialized hardware needed. Maybe you want to capture what's happening on your screen or multiple screens. Maybe you're working with an interactive whiteboard that you want to record. Maybe you're using a document camera. All of those are essentially audiovisual streams, which then you can combine with various elements. For example, I use a PowerPoint presentation like I'm doing now. I want to combine that with the audio and visual. I may, during my presentation, want to include access to a website, or review a document, or maybe set up an interactive form as part of this video. I maybe want captions so that it can be searchable. So by combining the streams and the elements, we complete our production. And now we take all of that and we have to package it so it can be used in a multitude of different formats. There are some proprietary formats which are particularly relevant when you're dealing with interactive content, but more common formats like an MP4 for a podcast, or maybe the new more modern ones where you have HTML5 as a new emerging standard, or historically a lot of education software used Flash for video content to be embedded in various types of material. We then choose to share that. Now, if you want a fully interactive environment, you typically will be using some form of application, which is a proprietary application which combines media facilities with rich interactive facilities. You might use things like YouTube or Vimeo, I beg your pardon. You might just host it on a shared folder on a cloud server like a Google Drive or a Dropbox. Or you might put it on your enterprise server or your institutional server on campus, or maybe even on your learning management platform. So you've got some choices to make there. But the real choices are made by the viewers. What client apps are they using? Browsers like Internet Explorer, Chrome or Safari? What operating systems are they running on their various platforms? And there's a multitude of different platforms. There are thousands of apps to choose from, each addressing one or more stages. The challenge, however, is do you as a lecturer have the competency, the equipment and the time to do all of this? Can you invest your energy? What is the cost of you investing your time and energy to achieve this? So what we need to do effectively is say, well, if you've got enough to do already and you don't have time to fiddle, and you've already got a variety of tools to contend with, how do you actually approach this? Well, first of all, we've got to look at reducing the cost in terms of effort expenditure and increasing the value to you. So this process has to be simplified, automated and integrated. And if we do that, you could benefit from being able to prepare anywhere, anytime, create reusable materials, minimize demand for your attention from students at peak cycles, prior to exam cycles, etc., and probably get a benefit from the feedback on student engagement. If we look at it from a learner perspective, students choose their own technology, work from anywhere, work at odd hours, or sometimes not in class. They don't necessarily make good notes. They don't want long videos. So how can you benefit the students? Well, you can benefit them by having searchable videos within a library, where they can selectively review that content at their own pace, multiple times if they like. In fact, they can even submit videos as feedback to you. So assignments where you want to validate remote work or identity or project work could even be submitted back to you in the form of video. What I have here is a schematic on the right showing use of the systems like this at Wits University, and it's interesting to note the cycles. So if we look on the right here on this graph, what you'll see is building up to the end of the first semester and building up to the end of the second semester. So these happen to be students doing calculus, first year students of calculus at Wits University, and this reflects the use by approximately 800-900 students. And what we're seeing here in one particular week, for example, there might be as much as 7,000 minutes of viewing of lecture and tutorial content in the space of 1 week. Now, if we take that as 60 minutes per hour, what we're really looking at is in excess of 1,000 hours of viewing of material produced by a single lecturer. This shows that the students are essentially accessing and using these systems. Some statistics at the bottom here, if we look at tutorials which are typically short 5 to 10 minute flipped classroom type tutorials, their viewing statistics are almost the same as the viewing statistics for the lectures that were recorded, and those lectures are 4 times as long, 5 times as long. So there's the kind of statistics you can get. You can drill down into particular areas, subjects, actual lectures, actual students' activity, and extract this information for interpretation in whichever way that suits you. And what I have here is a link where I can take you into the WITS site, the Northwest University sites, etc., and do some demonstrations, which I'm not going to do at this particular point. The recording interface is very simple. One-click recording. You can use hotkeys, F8, F9, F10. Very simple process, no tricks. Very simple selection of your streams. You answer questions. Essentially, do I want to capture a PowerPoint? Do I wish to capture my primary screen? If you have secondary screens, you can capture those too. You can choose your source from a video camera perspective and audio perspective. Again, a very simple exercise. Once you've captured, the entire system is automated. It handles all those phases of packaging, of production and packaging, setting up the sharing, the access rights, and distributing the entitlement to the various users, and presents it in different formats where one can view it as simply as a podcast on a smartphone or as a rich interactive view, for example, on a personal computer. And if I take an example of a rich interactive view, one would see the benefits of that from an approach perspective. Leveraging information and communication technology. So thanks very much. In support
That's it.
of modern learning.